Hello and welcome to Shaka Xtra Time. Shaka Ssali is off. My colleague Jackson Mvunganyi is sitting in for Shaka Ssali. Jackson is the host of Upfront. Jackson, welcome again to Shaka Xtra Time.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be here again.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
I do too.
A warm welcome to you all our Facebook followers watching us live. Shaka Xtra Time is a place where you get to talk to Shaka himself. Unfortunately, Shaka is out, but Jackson is going to be taking your questions. So, Jackson, let's start maybe with Mrs. Melania Trump's trip to Africa.
Right.
She just had a successful trip to Africa. What do you make of it?
I don't know by what measure you say, she had a successful trip on the continent. I feel like one, that story was kind of appended by more of her, her fashion choices more than what she did on the ground. Every story that I read had to do with her wearing that pith helmet. I don't know if you saw with the helmet that is very synonymous with colonialism in Africa. So which was a poor, fashion choice for her. And unfortunately kind of drowned out whatever good things that she did on the continent or, her visit.
But Jackson, there are people who said that, she's a fashionista. Let's use that term.
Right, and if you're a fashionista, you know the appropriate type of dressing or clothing that, in what environment and circumstances that you should, adorn it or wear it.
But you'd think that a person of her stature surely should have some people telling her what to wear.
You would think so too, right, Paul? You would think so too. I mean, ultimately, she probably did some good things on the continent. She visited Ghana. I feel like the trip to Kenya was also successful, highlighting some of the wildlife concerns on the continent, in Kenya specifically, maternal mortality issues in Ghana and in Malawi. And so some of those, just bringing to light some of those issues and having them be part of a larger conversations in terms of some of the policies, whether it's policy, UN policy, funding to maternal mortality, programs, maternal health programs on the continent, whether it is issues of wildlife protection in Kenya and other parts of Africa. As far as that is concerned, I think she did a great job. But I feel like that was drowned out by again her fashion choices. I
could not agree with you more, Jackson. But how about those people who say that wait a minute, she was trying to promote conservation, she was trying to promote maternal health, she went to so many different hospitals, but frankly speaking, that she cannot relate with some of these things.
Right.
When you talk about the environment, Donald Trump's sons, President Donald Trump's sons, all over the internet doing trophy hunting. This is something that she was supposed to highlight on one of her trips.
Right.
You talk about her looking at these young babies. Everybody likes to pose with young babies. What difference does it make for those?
Right, you're right. I think you do have a point. And the fact that also this administration has rolled back some of the protections, wildlife protections that we saw during the last administration.
But besides the negative aspects, there are some good things that came out of this trip.
Again, the fact that she was able to highlight these issues and bring them to part of the news cycle. Also, putting pressure on governments to put more money or to enact policies that are, for example, protect the environment or protect wildlife, look out, invest more in maternal health programs, and things of that nature. I think she did a great job in terms of bringing to light some of those issues. Mrs.
Trump is not the first U.S. First Lady to visit Africa. several others, Michelle Obama, George Bush, George Bush's wife, Arola Bush, Clinton, they all visited Africa,
Indeed,
at least in our recent memory.
Indeed.
How, if you were to compare those former first ladies with Melania Trump, maybe what would you say?
I would say, honestly, they all did a great job. They were first ladies of their, they were representative of their different administrations, and the role of these trips is, in a way, like we talked about last time, is to some sort of soft diplomacy, and they're the faces of the administration when they travel, highlighting some of the issues that are, personal to themselves. So they do have, varying levels of success depending on which administration is power and what kind of policies they're highlighting.
There is a Facebook comment here from Bafa Emigizo. Melania Trump's visit to Kenya, yet there are some... Melania Trump visited Kenya, yet there are some suffering countries that need help. Why did she not visit any disadvantaged countries?
Melania Trump did not visit countries bringing with her, bags of money or aid. Okay, so also when you talk about disadvantaged, what's the name of the gentleman, Bafa Amy?
Yes.
I don't know what you mean by, more disadvantaged, countries and what they would expect from a visit from the U.S.
If I was to use his own words, maybe he's looking at countries that are not doing very well economically. When you talk about Kenya, Kenya is on a totally different level. You talk about Egypt, you talk about Ghana, maybe with the exception of Malawi.
Right. Yeah. I think, her choices were in tandem with some of the priorities of the administration. I think she also went to highlight some of the programs that are funded by USAID. The deeper question there would be is how much more funding will these USAID programs be receiving, given that the First Lady was able to, to visit and see firsthand the work that some of the foreign aid that is being spent on the continent is doing. In terms of disadvantaged countries, again, I have an issue with calling some countries more disadvantaged than others because that is a relative term.
You raised a good point. You talked about highlighting some of the programs that are being advanced by USAID.
Yes.
But for example, in Malawi, she visited a school called Chipola Primary School that is receiving assistance from USAID. But some people would argue that that school has been struggling with enrollment. As much as they have pumped in money, there is really nothing much to show for it.
Okay. Well, I don't know that specific case of the school in Malawi. Again, it's very important that when you provide aid, you follow up and make sure that it is doing exactly what it's meant to do. That's another bigger topic that we can talk about another time. But let's go to the next topic.
Yeah, let's cross over to Uganda. Let me shout out to my compatriots. Happy Independence Anniversary.
Yeah, happy independence to you. Maybe I should ask you, 56 years of independence, do you feel any changes or the differences?
I don't know if I see any differences. What I know is that we've had a series of maybe political developments. We have one leader who has been in power for over 32 years, and he's still holding on to power. So if that's the kind of independence you want us to talk about, be my guest.
So do you feel independent?
Probably as an individual, I feel liberated, but as a country, I don't think we are that much liberated, because we are still heavily dependent on aid. Uganda is considered a third world country, not an emerging, it's one of the emerging economies, but considered as a third world country.
Right.
So I could go on and on and on. In terms of political space, there's not really much to write home about, and so many other things going wrong.
As a person country who's very much considered, consider myself also Ugandan in some ways, born and raised there too. Even though I got a shout out to my people in Rwanda, I'm Rwandan, to the
one
core.
of these days we'll ask you for reparations.
My concern is that 56 years from now, where will Uganda be? When our grandkids or great-grandkids look back 56 years at this point in history, we're going to have the new crop of leadership, young leaders who are going to take over from Museveni, who has been again in power for over 30 years. And, when they look back at our generation or the generation of the Musevenis, what they will be thinking and some of the progress they will have made at the time, and whether right now what we're doing is laying the foundation for them to have a better life than we did.
That's a great question, Jackson. I think when you think about it, the intellectual balance of power is shifting in the young people's favor. You have a lot of young people who are highly educated and who have the capabilities, who really have the skills that can take that country to the next level. Okay. I think what is holding these young people back is the leadership. It comes down to who is on top of who is the captain of the ship.
Right.
So, and in this particular case, it's the president who has been there for a very long time.
Right.
But that said,
I
think looking forward, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel.
So you're more optimistic about where the direction of Uganda right now?
Obviously, compared to most countries in the region, I think Uganda stands out. It's
on a better
well.
Political trajectory.
Other than the politics, everything else seems to be on a good trajectory.
I'll tell you what worries me, for me, as a person who watching this. I feel like that as much as we talk about independence, we need to examine what independence actually means. Also, most importantly, I think we need to look at the role of China currently being very aggressive in this trying to, acquire influence on the continent, and the fact that they're doing it with the complicity of the leadership, including the president of Museveni right now and many others on the continent. Whether that is not ushering in a new phase of colonialism, as some people have said, and that 56 years from now, Ugandans will be celebrating independence from another colonial power that is most likely doing its colonial work right now.
To be honest with you, I don't think I share the same view, and I disagree with that assessment. Here is why I disagree with that assessment. First of all, I think China is more of a business partner. They are in there for business, strictly business. They are not engaged in politics. For them, it's all about the bottom line, which is money. They're there to make money.
Right.
And secondly, I think Africa, most African countries have a deficit problem, a deficit in terms of the infrastructure. We don't have the technology, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the resources to build that infrastructure. And now China comes in and plays that role.
Right.
So that's why I said I disagree with that. They're looking at it from a business perspective.
I don't know. I feel like low-key China is making other moves, or making moves where they will be able to call shots to the point where they will be determining on who comes into your country or not.
You have
Case in point, the case of PLO Lumumba, a man we greatly admire on this show, who has been critical of the role of China on the continent. And we know that recently, or a couple of weeks ago, he was on his way to Zambia, and the Zambian authorities refused him entry based on some of the criticism he's had over China's influence or role in the development of Zambia right now.
Great point, great point. I think, yes, I agree with you on that, but at the same time, I think that you have to look at it from the context of the Americans have saying that who pays the piper calls the tune, right? So I think you have to look at it from there. Chinese right now, Zambia is heavily indebted to China.
Right.
They've funded so many projects out there. So if somebody is going to come and criticize the government, their ties and whatever is going on between China and Zambia, then they have every right to deny that person entry. But having said that, I think they erred in judgment. Why? Because they should not have gone to that. Pierre Lumumba is a renowned public speaker.
Anti-corruption campaigner. I think that's a much better way to...
That's how he has made his name, as an anti-corruption campaigner. So I think they erred in judgment to not to allow him to go to Zambia.
Absolutely, I agree with you. There's a Kenyan story that I'm really dying for you to talk about.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's talk about one of our colleagues.
In the news, right?
It's been in the news.
Right, the Kenyan story that has the trappings of a Mexican soap opera. You know, tragic
Hollywood.
in many ways because a young lady lost her life. But somebody involved in this story is somebody that you know personally.
I know her personally, and it's unfortunate that she's a remarkable journalist. But it's unfortunate that she's entangled in this, I guess, a love triangle, where one of the girlfriends of her current fiancé. Right. Ends up dead, and she was the first person to report about the story. So this young lady called Jacqueline Maribe is arguably one of the best reporters in Kenya. She works for Citizen Television in Kenya. But what I've been reading in the news is something that I can't wrap my hands.
Because you know her personally, she's a personal friend?
Absolutely, right. Absolutely. So I feel
this is a story, for those of you who have not heard about this story, you need to go online, check it out. It is a story that involves a Sudanese general. It has a popular TV anchor. It has a boyfriend, her fiancé, who is implicated. The TV anchor goes on air and breaks the news to the world about the murder of this young lady who supposedly now, they say, at least they're still in court. The courts haven't decided. I think the trial, I don't know whether the trial has started yet, but they did appear in court. And they said that the boyfriend or the fiancé of this, Jackie Mariba, who is a TV anchor in Kenya, is implicated. And that they knew something or they connived in, hiding the evidence. I mean, if it's a web that it's only made in the movies.
When you look at it, I think there's either love gone wrong or corruption. Some money got lost somewhere. Somebody was trying to take care of some money. I'm just speculating at this point. I just read some evidence that they have presented before the courts. It looks very, very interesting. You're right. This could be a great script for a great movie. Yeah. Let's go to some of the Facebook comments. Let's go to Negusi in Addis Ababa. The problem of Africa is ethnic politics. What needs to stop? How can we achieve this?
We need to break out of this mentality of seeing each other in terms of our tribes. For some reason I thought that those are things that we stopped doing in the 90s and the 80s. We should be at this point above politics of tribe. We should be trying to build our countries based on on what you bring to the table, whether it's your education, your skills. It does not matter which tribe you are. It does not matter where you were born or you were raised. I think we are stronger as a country, or any country is stronger when they speak in unison in terms of the interest of the country. The development goals of a country should align with the nation, not with just one tribe, whether it's the tribe in power or not in power. I think we should move past that at this point.
Let's go to another Facebook comment here. We've been talking a lot about corruption, and I see a couple of comments. Maybe let's start with Alexander. Are you aware that in Liberia, 16 billion Liberian dollars went missing, and the government just told us today no money is missing? What's going on? Yes,
to answer your question, I am very much aware. We addressed that issue or that story on my show Upfront. You should check us out on Facebook, keywords Upfront Show VOA. You will see a conversation that I had with a young Liberian leader and social activist, Larama Nyonto, who was talking to us about some of the issues, underlying issues that regarding the disappearance of this money. What we know about this money is that the central bank in Liberia ordered for currency to be printed in Sweden. That money was transported in containers from Sweden, and it was on its way to the central bank, and somewhere in between, the money disappeared. And the question is, how does, I think it's over $100 million US dollars, I believe, or 60 million, between 16 to $100 million, because there's some sort of fuzzy math on how much money it is and who ordered the printing of the money. Whether it was in the president's office, whether it's a central bank, that, you know, some of those questions are still unanswered. And the government of President Weah in Liberia instituted a commission to kind of answer some of those questions. There are so many conflicting stories about the whereabouts, whether the money actually is missing or not, who took the money. We know that the son of the former president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, is implicated in the disappearance of this money, and that also raises the stakes on whether President Sirleaf herself knew about it, what this government is going to do about it, and many things. So we will keep, watching this story as it develops. I'm very much interested in knowing who took the money, and hopefully that they can recover the money, take it to the central bank, and that it supports the programs that it's supposed to support, because Liberia needs the money for their education, to support their education system, their health system. We know the country is, coming out of an Ebola crisis that killed thousands of people. They need every kind of help they can get. They do not need to be dealing with issues where funds are being, being stolen on that level, because that's a lot of money.
Let's go to another comment. Marie James in Moshi, Tanzania. How can the East African community fight against corruption? Maybe to tie it into what you just talked about. How can $100 million just disappear on a way from, you've been to Liberia, right? From the airport to the main city? Really, there is not much,
Right.
How can money just disappear just like that?
So the thing is about leadership. I'm very encouraged by the AU having prioritized corruption as one of the issues they're going to be dealing with in the next couple of years. Corruption starts from the top. If there is no commitment from the leadership to fight corruption, and then the people themselves don't have the power or the will to do it. Because, let's talk about Tanzania. That gentleman is from Tanzania?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've seen some of what President Magufuli has been doing in Tanzania in terms of fighting corruption. He's taken on some, entrenched powers or systems or government leaders who have been part of the power system for so many years, and we saw him firing them. As much as I don't like how he does it in this very, very populist way, I think it sends a good message when you go after the leaders and the people see that there is no appetite for corruption at all from the top. And when they do that, then they also know that next time they're being asked for a bribe on the street by the police, or in an office for them for a document to be processed, they know that they can say no and still are able to access that document that they were supposed to have in the first place.
Yeah, Jackson, you made a very good example of Tanzanian President John Magufuli, but there are critics out there who say that, wait a minute, Jackson, Magufuli himself is not the kind of guy who is going to fight corruption, because in the manner in which he does carry out some of these is not right. If you want to fight corruption, you have to set up institutions that can fight. Not you at the top calling shots. So how would you respond?
I agree. And again, part of the role of the leadership is help strengthen those institutions. What Magufuli is doing and how he's doing it, like I told you, I have issues with that. You cannot fight corruption in such a very public setting and be effective, or you cannot effectively do it. However, I think it sends a good message when you hold leaders accountable. I've seen, for example, in places like in Rwanda, where President Kagame goes to the citizens themselves and calls out leadership right in broad daylight when he's holding like a rally of some sort, and people come and say, you know, this guy is not working for us. We don't feel like he's being responsive. We feel that there's some sectors or some issues that he's not. He should be, you know, doing better. And then President Kagame will sometimes call out the leader in front of the public and say, hey, you know, you should answer to this or do this and that. I think those are some of the techniques that Magufuli is using. How effective they are, I don't know, because then it has. There's some who argue that, you know, having that strongman mentality towards resolving some of these underlying issues or systemic issues is not something that is effective. You need institutions, like you said. So building institutions should be part of a longer-term goal, longer-term process. You cannot solve an issue that has been festering for, you know, 100 years or 20 years or 40 years in 1 year or 2 years. And so we need to see that institutions are being strengthened, with people being trained, citizens sensitized.
Prosecuted.
Yeah, you know, prosecutions of people who are being, or, you know, convictions of people who have been implicated in some of these crimes of corruption.
Some people say that I don't usually give President Kagame credit, but I would like maybe to agree with you that when it comes to corruption, he has taken a lead on the fight against corruption.
And it's under his leadership that the African Union is making that a priority, fighting corruption around the continent, and hopefully that they can, you know, other countries on the continent will use that as a basis or as a lead. They look at the example of Rwanda, which has been said to be one of the least corrupt countries on the continent, and that they can learn some of the lessons.
Yeah, let's go to another comment from Mom Godfrey in Marundi, northern Benue State in Nigeria. How did the whites in South Africa acquire land in South African countries?
My friend, you should read up on a little bit on South African history. It has to do with colonialism. It has to do with apartheid. Land in South Africa, I don't know. I don't remember the statistics exactly, but I believe 70% of the land.
More than
70% of the land is owned by 10% of the population or less, or, you know, just like around that figure. It is a history of you know, inequality that was part of a strategy by the apartheid regime to keep black people in poor neighborhoods, you know, settlements,
in urban centers.
And, you know, we know that right now part of what is happening in the current government of Ramaphosa is that they are still debating on how to approach this land issue, whether they are going to, you know, appropriate the land and you know, give a little money back to the people who are holding all these you know, massive lands that they're not using. It's a very sensitive topic, very sensitive issue, and we'll see how Ramaphosa deals with it.
We have to give credit to Julius Malema, who has been championing this land issue in South Africa. Before we go tomorrow on Straight Talk Africa, we'll be talking about Melania Trump's trip to Africa. Guest host Vincent Makori and his guests will discuss that topic exclusively. So stay tuned in for tomorrow's Straight Talk Africa. Shaka Ssali will be back in 2 weeks. For now, to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching Shaka Extra Time. Until next week, so long from Washington.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.